Last time we did NFC South, it's time to stick with the South theme, sticking with bad football, going to the AFC South.
Duval.
What is going on, Updog fans? It's Matt Miller again. For Updog Sports Talk, I got Chad Bunt
What's up?
and Justin McGovern.
Woo!
All right. Last time we did NFC South, it's time to stick with the South theme, sticking with bad football, going to the AFC South. All right, Chad, take it away.
All right. The Indianapolis Colts. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Everybody likes to talk about Jonathan Taylor this and Jonathan Taylor that, but Jonathan Taylor likes to also get injured a lot. And I see that continuing this year. I think he spends his whole season again trying to race back through injury. Anthony Richardson, I like the draft pick. Unfortunately, I'm concerned that he might be a big flop at this point. Not saying he's done anything to be a flop, but I just don't see it working out. They don't really have too many weapons for the man. I think Pittman's their best option. Other than that, I mean, Alec Pierce, most other teams, he'd be a 3 or 4, and he's a number 2 there. And defense, though, I think they have a really good defense, and I think that's the bright spot of their team. I think there's a lot of people on that defensive line that are going to make some teams very mad.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson definitely was an interesting pick. We knew whoever picked him, it was going to be interesting no matter where he went. Personally, I do think the Colts was a good landing spot for him. Shane Steichen has a really good scheme. You know, he managed to work with Jalen Hurts. He kind of was similar in that Jalen Hurts wasn't exactly a polished passer coming out of college. You know, his accuracy in deep passes was not great, and he's improved significantly. So getting someone under that system to coach up Anthony Richardson was a huge move. I mean, this year, I'm curious to see how accurate he's going to be. I don't think he'll be that accurate. A lot of his damage this year will be running the ball. And that's why, you know, you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is going to be key. He needs to stay healthy. Last year was not a good year. The year before, he was fantastic. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to look. The offensive line, I mean, what is it? Is it actually going to be good this year? Because like a couple of years ago, they had one of the best lines in the league. Didn't really have a lot of changes, and all of a sudden, it was terrible.
Also, shout out to Pat McAfee. I'm sorry I don't have a jersey on for you today. I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, you're left out of this. You did not have a Pat McAfee jersey. Come on now.
You did not go to Kohl's and get a discount.
Yeah.
No one told me.
Yeah, we did find these at Kohl's randomly.
Like, they had an Updog meeting at Kohl's and they didn't call me this time, guys.
No, Justin went, bought it, and then I Vizelled him.
I kid you not. Like, this is like 6 years after he retired, and there was randomly 2 Pat McAfee jerseys at the Kohl's. Like, that was the most random thing ever. But yeah, finishing up the offense, like you said, I mean, Pittman's pretty good. I'm not sure if he's one of the best number 1s in the league. Alec Pierce, it has potential. I'd like to see him to continue to develop a little bit more. They don't really have a lot of weapons outside of that. I mean, they have some massive tight ends who occasionally made plays, but getting them involved more consistently is key. Defensively, I mean, I do think they're good. I'm not sure if I agree that they're completely studs. The pass rush isn't fantastic. They need to get a little bit better there. What is it going to look like without Ngakwe there anymore? Kwity Paye
still available, so they could pick him up.
Technically, they could, but we'll see. They haven't indicated they wanted to so far. But Kwity Paye was a first round pick last year. He needs to step up.
Where's Buckner's the man?
Shaq Leonard back. Sorry about that, Chad.
No, I apologize.
Getting Shaq Leonard back is going to be the biggest thing, though. They sorely missed him last year, so getting him back is going to be huge. I am concerned about the secondary, though. Kenny Moore is not playing as good anymore. Stephon Gilmore was the only corner that played well last year. He's gone. Their safeties are all right, but I'm a little bit concerned about the secondary. Matt, what are your thoughts?
This whole team is just in shambles. Receivers, the only thing that I like about the receivers is Alec Pierce is super underrated. And the fact that Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman Jr. already have good chemistry. They were in a parking lot just tossing the football back and forth with each other when they actually technically were not allowed to.
I love these off-season stories.
Their offensive line on paper should be the best offensive line in football. When you apply it to actual videotape, though, they were terrible last year. So can they stay consistent? Bernard Raymond, I think, was a big part of why they were terrible last year. He did not play like a first round pick. He needs to, or a third round pick. I'm sorry. He didn't even play like a third round pick. He played like a seventh round lineman. But he's got to step up. Quentin Nelson has to go back to being the best guard in the NFL. Otherwise, they're going to rely on Jonathan Taylor because Zach Moss isn't doing it. Their fifth round pick, Evan Hall, isn't doing it. Jake Funk isn't doing it. They don't have any depth on offense. None whatsoever. One person gets hurt, that team is just going on a losing streak. Defensively, I forget who it was last year. They sold off a bunch of big names. I think it was the Broncos. But I think that's what the Colts are going to do. I think they're going to have to start selling off some of their aging stars.
You could argue they already did. I mean, trading away Stephon Gilmore to the Cowboys was one of the moves. Ngakoue didn't really trade him; they kind of just let him walk. But other than that, they don't really have a lot of talent left. Shaq Leonard, I think, is young enough that they're just going to keep him as one of the kingpins of the defense.
Assuming, because I have not looked at this, assuming the Colts have a first round pick next year, I think they're going to be tanking for Marvin Harrison Jr.
Ooh, now that would be really good.
That would be really good.
That would be.
Remember, the Cardinals
in order to do that,
top 10 picks, basically.
Huh?
Don't the Cardinals basically own 2 top 10 picks?
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Yes.
So I think they're going to try to move on from Shaq Leonard and DeForest Buckner just so they can get the draft capital so they can move up in the draft and get Marvin Harrison Jr.
Be a good move.
Otherwise, this team probably fighting for a top 5 spot. And Rigoberto Sanchez and Matt Gay are just going to hold it down on the special teams, putting the ball 50, 60 yards, kicking the ball not even through the uprights with those goggles.
Oh my!
We don't have to talk about the Colts anymore. They're basically pre-Peyton Manning Colts now.
All right, Chad, get us on the Jaguars. We need
Jacksonville Jaguars. Duval, right? Trevor Lawrence, the man. I think he's going to put himself in the top 5 quarterback talk this year. I think he's going to really tear it up. I think that the addition of Calvin Ridley and Evan Ingram coming back, I think that's going to help that offense so much, as well as Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne. I think that offense is going to kill it. I think their defense is only going to get better as time goes. I think they were a good defense last year. I think they can continue that this year.
Well, first of all, definitely I'll agree with you on the offense. Trevor Lawrence showed us exactly what he could be now that the Urban Meyer disaster was over with. Lawrence stepped up. He was the guy that we all thought he was, led the team to a playoff victory. And how about the surprise that Christian Kirk and Zay Jones were? We all kind of laughed at them for giving these guys a bunch of money, but they performed. They did good. Mm-hmm. Evan Ingram just earned himself a big contract now. It was all well-deserved, and now very curious to see what Calvin Ridley does. He's been out of the league for a little bit, so that's my one concern with him, but he could really help evolve this offense even more. Etienne is still there. He performed very well last year after missing his rookie year. So last year kind of was his rookie year, so he was good for a rookie. And the one thing, though, the one concern I have with the offensive line, with the offense, I got ahead of myself, is the offensive line. If the offense struggles at all this year, it is going to be because of this offensive line. It is terrible. They have a complete disaster at the tackle situation with Cam Robinson on the verge of a suspension. And then they lost Taylor, another one of their offensive linemen, to free agency. Weren't able to sign him back. This is going to be a challenge without any good tackles. They've drafted a rookie in the first round, so obviously we'll see what pans out there. Maybe he becomes a stud and gets his team back to the playoffs. But I'm very concerned about this offensive line. Defensively, I'm going to disagree with you, Chad. Their defense is really bad. Trevor Lawrence had to go off late in the year to carry this team through offensive shootouts because the defense wasn't able to get the stops. That is what ended their season against the Chiefs, despite Mahomes getting hurt and old ass Chad Henne going in there. They were still not able to get stops and get off the field to get Trevor Lawrence back on the field. And I don't really think they did enough upgrades here. I really don't think they did. Josh Allen is a stud of defensive line, but Trayvon Walker did not produce as the number one pick. It's crazy to think if they drafted Aiden Hutchinson instead, I think the Jaguars may have made the AFC Championship last year. But they didn't, and Walker has to step up. Devin Lloyd, the other first-round pick, also has to step up. Matt, what are your thoughts? Because I feel like I've been long-winded here.
You have been long-winded. So I think their receivers are actually kind of up there. I wouldn't put them on the same tier as the Bengals or the Dolphins or anything like that, but they're actually solid, like very, very solid. They got 2 number ones and a number 2.
Yeah.
And a number 3, I guess. But they don't have really anybody behind any of them. So if any of them gets hurt, they're going to be relying on Evan Ingram, some of their tight ends to step up and get more targets. ETN going to have a great year. They got Tank Bigsby coming in, also in rotation. Justin, I'm going to disagree with you on the offensive line. Walker Little is still really good. And Brandon Scherf is maybe old, but he's still really good. Anton Harrison, the fact that they knew about Cam Robinson right before the draft was like saving grace, because otherwise they would not have been able to get a tackle until like way, way, way later. So the fact that Anton Harrison, despite being a slight reach where he was taken, I think that kind of fell into their laps. So I think they're going to be solid on the offensive line. But Justin, like you said, it is their weakness. Defensively, I think Trayvon Walker is kind of figuring out the NFL. I think the fact that it was his first year, brand new head coach setting everything up in the system for the first time. Had there been an established coach, I think he probably would have done a little bit better. But I think he's going to get a few more sacks this year. To me, he seems more like a run stopper than anything. But Josh Allen is still there. They got Smoot back. They have a few pieces, but other than that, they are a little thin on defense, especially in the secondary. I think it's going to be a lot of shootouts, but in a weak division, they can definitely take care of it. And they got Brandon McManus kicking long balls.
Big shout out to Doug Peterson there too.
Yeah.
What he did with that team last year was huge.
Yeah, Doug Peterson did not forget how to coach.
No.
Good.
So it turns out that he is better than Frank Reich. It was not Frank Reich the reason why they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Showed that. Chad, take it away with the Houston Texans.
The Houston Texans. They weren't a very fun team to watch last year. They had some games that are really interesting, like when they were up, 24-0 against the Chiefs, and ended up blowing it. But I think, CJ Stroud coming in, they have their questions, but I think he's going to be the man. I think he's going to be a consistent quarterback, something that Houston hasn't really ever had. And I think Will Anderson arguably could become the rookie of the year. I think taking the two of them really solidified that team, and they're moving in the right direction, although I don't think it'll be enough. But like I said, their defense is going to be really fun to watch this year, and let's see what CJ Stroud can do with that offense.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. I'm glad the Texans finally actually have a plan, because I feel like they just wandered around the last 2 years just doing nothing, running around with Dougie Mills as their quarterback and firing coaches after 1 year, even though they have one of the worst rosters in the NFL. The roster still is a work in progress, especially because they made no progress in the last 2 years. Are they going to give D'Amico Ryans more than 1 year? It's been an absolute joke that they fired coaches after 1 year, 2 years in a row. That's stupid. I'm excited to see what Stroud does, though. Dameon Pierce is a good running back. They added Singletary too, but I'm not sure what he's going to bring. The offensive line is solid, but I'm concerned about receiver. Who is Stroud going to throw to? John Mechie is an inspiration to us all. It's really awesome. He's back. He's going to be a guy that maybe can step up. They drafted Tank Dell this year. Maybe he can step up. They don't really have anyone else. They have Robert Woods, who is just old at this point. He produced nothing last year. So I'm a little bit concerned with receiver. Defensively, the defensive line has a huge boost now, having Will Anderson, like you said. And then they also added Perryman at linebacker to help against the run. So there's some improvements. Secondary is still a work in progress. Stingley struggled as a rookie. Made them already regret taking him over Sauce for sure. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what they can do. They have a path forward now. They aren't ready to compete this year, but they actually have a path forward. Matt, what are your thoughts?
So on the receiver thing, shout out John Mechie for beating cancer. Robert Woods, I don't think he's going to be terrible. I think there's nothing going on in Tennessee. He was actually still pretty good when the Rams traded him away. So, and then he bounced around. I think Patriots were a team he got hurt at. But I think he can be their number one in terms of like a deep threat. Mechie, kind of want to see what he does in the offense. Tank Dell's going to be a big player. Nico Collins has been there, so he's their speed guy. So a lot of drag routes with him, a lot of slants. He can take it to the house at any second. So there's no flashy names, but I think they have a group of just overall top to bottom solid receivers. Offensive line, they have probably one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And it's funny to think that the Texans have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. But Laramie Tunsil is the best left tackle. Shaq Mason signed on. Titus Howard is going strong. Couple of holes in the middle, but they got depth behind them. So it's like they have a similar player behind them in the depth chart. So if they struggle, the other guy can come in. Tight end, they got Dalton Schultz, so that's going to be huge. I don't think he's going to be as good as he was in Dallas, but I think he's going to be rather solid. Defensively, lots of promise here, but just like the offense, they have a lot of similar players in the depth chart. So if somebody doesn't do well or gets hurt, they have another guy who can step in to take over. But Jerry Hughes is not a Will Anderson. I'll tell you that right now. Will Anderson is probably going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Hey, Jerry Hughes is still going strong at 35, though. 9 sacks last year.
And then secondary doesn't impress me, but they have some names. And then they have depth behind them. So I can see them finishing second in the division. Literally all of it hinges upon that man on the screen right there, CJ Stroud. How can he play? Is he going to be able to scramble a little bit, get those yards that maybe a stagnant offense wouldn't get? Dameon Pierce, how consistent is he going to be? Devin Singletary, is he going to be okay like he was in Buffalo, or is he just going to be terrible? There's a lot of question marks surrounding this team, including the head coach. I mean, I love D'Amico Ryans, but how is he as a head coach? We've never seen that before. How is his coaching staff? How do they get it put together? So the whole team is a giant question mark. They could do pretty well. They could make the playoffs. They could miss the playoffs by a little bit, or they could just do absolutely nothing and tank for somebody else next year.
Yeah. Hey, maybe they could tank for Marvin Harrison Jr.
Maybe.
Yeah,
that would make a lot of sense.
Didn't they give up their pick? Didn't they give up their pick to take Will Anderson?
Oh, you're right. They did.
So maybe they have motivation.
The Cardinals have 2 picks.
Yeah.
They're not.
So maybe they have the motivation to actually win.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of question marks, like you guys say, but I think they'll win a few games. You know, they'll make a little.
Definitely a lot more than last year.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, hey, they have a path forward. Speaking of motivation to win, on to the Tennessee Titans. Chad, take it away.
Man, the Tennessee Titans. Look out for the Tennessee Titans. They're gonna do okay. Derrick Henry's a monster, and they got DeAndre Hopkins. Everybody wanted DeAndre Hopkins. Who's gonna pay him? But the problem is they got 3 quarterbacks, and all 3 of them, I don't know what they're gonna do. My best guess is that down the line, Will Levis will come in because they invested in him. But I think Tannehill retains it for right now. Malik Willis probably goes somewhere else. That's going to be the problem with this team is they're not going to be consistent coming from a quarterback. And defensively, they're quiet, but they're pretty good. I mean, their defensive line has always been pretty good in the past couple of years, and maybe a wild card spot for them. I really don't think they're gonna go crazy. Derrick Henry's foot's too heavy.
Yeah, I was very curious to see what the Titans would look like and what their next move was. And then they made that statement with DeAndre Hopkins that they still plan to be a contender. I mean, last year they struggled because they had no weapons to throw to. They still stuck and were down to the last week competing for the division because Vrabes is such an awesome coach. Yeah, like you said, the quarterback position is a bit of a question mark. I think DeAndre Hopkins can help Tannehill out a little bit, maybe get him back to a level where he's at least serviceable. Can kind of keep the offense going, get the ball to Hopkins in the play action at the running at the ball, pounding the rock with Derrick Henry. The offensive line kind of still needs some work. I think they made a few moves there, but still needs work up front. Derrick Henry, though, is still the engine to makes this offense run. He's getting to 29. It's getting a little bit scary. Is he getting too high up in age? Because if he falls off, that's it. This team's done. They're falling to the bottom division and starting all over again. But you're right, though. This defense is full of studs. Jeffrey Simmons and that group in the defense, Kevin Byard in the secondary, that is a really strong defense, and they're going to keep them in a lot of games. And obviously, like I mentioned before, Vrabel as a coach is going to keep them in a lot of games too. It's just really all about the health of Henry. And then, yeah, Hopkins, I think, adds a receiving weapon for once because they didn't have any last year. Matt, what do you think?
I don't know what to think about the Titans because on paper, DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks, Nick Westbrook, Kine, 3 good receivers to lump together because they all complement each other. Hopkins is probably going to get almost all the targets at this point, if we're honest with ourselves. But, I mean, they have Chris Moore behind him. Meh. He hasn't really panned out a whole lot in the NFL. Decent return guy, but behind the 3 of them, there's nothing. The offensive line lost Taylor Lewan. Yeah, he got hurt. Yeah, he gave up 5 sacks in the first game last year. But he was still a big leader on that offensive line, and they didn't really replace him. Not to that caliber. Derrick Henry gets hurt a lot. Ryan Tannehill is basically a slightly improved version of Andy Dalton. He's just been able to be a starter for longer. I do think either Ryan Tannehill or Malik Willis will be traded before week 1 of the season. If Tannehill gets traded, Levis is definitely the starter. They're going to hang on to Levis and Willis for quite a while. If Tannehill is a starter, I think the Packers may kick the tires on Malik Willis as an insurance policy in case Jordan Love doesn't pan out. That way they have a young arm of similar talent under contract for a little bit. Defensively, it's the Titans defense. They're going to be good as long as Mike Vrabel is the head coach. Kevin Bayard, Sean Murphy Bunting came over. Amani Hooker, I'm sorry. Screwed that up a few times. Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, Tyler Tart. They got a squad of just dogs on defense. But we saw last year, if you don't have an offense to move the ball, that defense isn't worth a damn. So they got to be able to move the ball on offense in order for us to be able to say that that's a good defense. So it all comes down, once again, to quarterback play and health.
Yep, agreed. All right, so with that, let's put pen to paper here. Let's go over our finishing order, left to right here. Matt, take it away.
So I'm going to stick with the Jaguars winning the division, despite all the moves that were made. It's hard to pick against them. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, Chad, you said earlier, going to be a top 5 quarterback by the end of the season.
For sure.
Then I have the Titans. I think as long as Derrick Henry is healthy and Ryan Tannehill can just be a game manager by getting the ball to Hopkins, I think the Titans can pull off number 2 in the division. Otherwise, the Texans are going to be number 2. The Colts dead last. But yeah, Titans and Texans are going to be fighting for 3rd. So Oilers moving to Tennessee, Houston. Yeah, they're going to be fighting each other again.
Excited for those uniforms.
Same,
Yeah,
especially since they're
Houston.
wearing them against Houston.
Oh, that'd be great. So yeah, I went a little bit different than you. I'm keeping optimism around Tennessee. I think Derrick Henry is one more good year in the tank. Adding DeAndre Hopkins was huge for the passing game. Add that along with Burks developing a little bit better, and we finally get what they want to be again with Derrick Henry pounding the rock and being able to hit Hopkins and Burks in play action. And that defense, I think they look like they did a couple of years ago when they were really at their top form for one last time here. I think after this year, they're kind of going to go downhill, but they do it. They win the division. Colts, I really do think I like what Steichen can do.
Are you drunk?
I like what he can do. This team was not far from being good. They were just good a couple of years ago. And I
do
think
like Steichen.
maybe with better coaching, they can get back up there. And that's what I'm going with here. The Jaguars, I like this team too. Love Trevor Lawrence. There's just a couple things I'm worried about there at the offensive line and the defense. They're going to still be in a lot of shootouts this year. And if the offensive line does not improve, then that will put them on the other end of those shootouts because the margins were very thin for that team. They won quite a few close games down the stretch to get in the playoffs. So, even a little bit of a downgrade to the offensive line could send them in the wrong direction. And that's what I'm worried about there. Texans, I see them a little bit below those teams. I like the path they're getting on, but they are a year from really contending for anything.
Honestly, Chad, the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Texans have bright futures. The Titans have to win now.
Yep. Otherwise, this year they have to make something happen.
Otherwise, Derrick Henry might be shipped out partway through the season.
Yeah, I think probably what we're going to look at is what's going to happen is Derrick Henry might move on. But like I said earlier, Duval, Jacksonville Jaguars are going to win the division just like they did last year. Trevor Lawrence, top 5 quarterback. He's got all these receivers now. He's got running backs. His offensive line, I disagree. I think is not terrible. And I think, Rome wasn't built overnight. Neither is a defense. So, you got these guys that haven't produced yet. It's only their 2nd year. So I look at Jacksonville. I think they're going to win the division. I think Tennessee is right behind them. But like I said, I think it's going to be too little too late. I think they're too aged. I think DeAndre Hopkins went to the wrong team personally. And I think they may get a wild card spot, may miss it. Houston Texans, I think the future looks bright. I think they got the quarterback. I think they got an offensive line. I really like Mechie. I really like a lot of that offense. And I think defensively, their defensive backs may have had some bad games, but I think they had a lot of really good games. And I think they're young. They got those mistakes they got to make. So going forward, I think Houston's going to be looking pretty good. Maybe a couple years down the road, we can start talking about them competing. In Indianapolis, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I don't see them making it through the season with Jonathan Taylor staying healthy. I don't think they can make it with one wide receiver other than Pittman, and I think their defense is going to carry them, and it's going to be too much. They can't just rely on that. So look forward to seeing none of these games on Thursday night.
Also, one last note. The Jaguars, if they win the division, they're going to be playing at the Daytona Motor Speedway while they get a new stadium.
Either that or the stadium in the North Florida Ospreys. We'll see.
That's like the most Florida thing I've ever heard.
So that is our AFC South predictions and breakdown. If you have anything else, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment on the video. So long, folks.
Goodbye.
Maybe.